And joining me right now, CNN political commentators Scott Jennings and Bakari Sellers to talk all about this. Bakari, as our colleague Stephen Collinson wrote it, January 6, 2025 will mark the most stunning political comeback in U.S. history. Congress will convene to certify Trump's 2024 election win, clearing his way to be America's 47th president. Today marks showing American democracy works, or the nation has short memories?
Short memories. I think that Democrats should go out and Joe Biden should rally on the Mall. I think then we should go in and make sure that we sit on Mike Johnson's desk. We should take the Confederate flag and parade through the Capitol. I think we should injure 140 officers. And then if Kamala Harris dares to certify the vote, we should threaten to hang her. I mean, do you see how, I think people should understand how ludicrous that sounds, but that's where we were 4 years ago. That is what this incoming president helped usher in. But what we've realized is it's not just short memories. It's the same thing we've seen around the world with Justin Trudeau later this week and others. But it's the same thing we've seen around the world. These economic pressures, prices rising, cultural anxiety lead to these electoral outcomes.
Scott, in a political sense, is it how we got here? Is interesting, and you can see the evolution. You can play all the sound bites from the days after when you heard Republicans blaming Donald Trump, some being short of saying he should be impeached, saying he should be held accountable. And 4 years later, we are here. It is a stunning political comeback attributed to how Trump played it afterward, how Democrats played it afterward, or something else?
Well, I think it's some mixture of everything. But to me, the big message is that in the United States, the people decide. And because of the disastrous 4 years that came after Donald Trump, the people decided to return Donald Trump to power. And that's fundamentally what happened. They looked at what happened on January the 6th. They looked at all the things Democrats claimed about Donald Trump. And they also analyzed every single decision that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris made. And they delivered Donald Trump a convincing victory 4 years later.
It is tough, though, Scott, because when you say the people decide, that's what people tried to make sure didn't happen on January 6th, was allowing the people to decide.
And the machinery turned. It was a terrible...
The lack of acknowledgement of how bad it was in the aftermath.
I mean, I think a great many people have acknowledged it, but also what happened that day. The machinery turned. Joe Biden became the president. He had one of the worst terms of any U.S. president, and then the people scrambled back to Donald Trump. That is the history of what happened.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I look at today, Donald Trump is inheriting one of the best economies that a president has inherited in a very long period of time. If you look at the fact that something like net migration at the border is lower than it was even before Donald Trump took office. If you want to look at the stock market, you're looking at the stock market rising.
I'm sorry. I'm
not even finished running it down yet.
This is the first time. The border needs to be secured further, and this number can be accurate.
This is the first time in dozens of years that a president has actually inherited a government where we don't have soldiers overseas in active combat zones. So, I mean, let's actually look at where we are. He is actually inheriting a government right now that is much better than any predecessor he's had before.
Okay. I mean, I recognize that was the argument that was made during the election, and I would also like to recognize that the American people soundly rejected that argument. We do have American troops in forward locations all over the world.
Not in combat zones.
But they are in hot spots. I mean,
but not in combat zones.
We just had an American soldier die not too long ago in the Middle East.
Correct. And they're protecting our freedom every day.
Trying to fix Joe Biden's $300 million public relations peer for Gaza. I mean, the reality is migration was a disaster. Immigration was a disaster for 3.5 years. And they tried to window dress it for the last 6 months. Inflation was a disaster for all 4 years. The economy is not working for most people. That's why Democrats lost the election, and that's why they're going back to Trump.
Democrats lost the election. Nobody's arguing that. I mean, that's what the argument was 4 years ago when Donald Trump was filing lawsuits and they were raiding the White House. What we are saying, though, is that prices are going down. What I am saying is murder rates.
Going down.
They actually are going down.
Inflation is still
plateauing.
It is decreasing in rate, which is the entire goal.
But are prices going down or not? Just to be clear. No, they're not.
They are down from their sky high rates.
Yes. Actually,
no. Let's move on. Next up for
we were just arguing over combat zones. I don't know where we are this morning.
You can argue.
You guys are trying to paint a picture of a country that doesn't exist.
I'm not painting anything. I'm painting. Stop talking. That's what I'm painting. Next up, Sarah, help me. Next up, the Republican majority in Congress is now getting to work. They've got the talk of this big bill that they want to try to put forth, combining all of Trump's priorities, a lot of the topics we're talking about right here, into one massive bill. It's been described as what could be the biggest bill in American history. Could this be good for Democrats in getting priorities? Because what does a big bill do? You shove a whole bunch of stuff in.
This isn't happening. I mean, what we're going to learn is that, and Scott knows this better than I do because his relationship with Mitch McConnell, but one of the most important people in the United States Senate is the parliamentarian. And so a lot of these things that we want to happen, Democrats tried to usher in immigration reform through reconciliation. That didn't quite happen because and you have individuals around the president. For example, I read an article the other day from Bill Ackman, who was saying that President Trump is going to privatize Fannie and Freddie.
Remind him to do that.
One of his goals, one of his priorities. Like, you can't pass that through reconciliation. I mean, that's just not going to happen, and the votes aren't there to do it.
A lot of people will say it's not going to happen, but could this be what we have seen before? Let's talk about with the eyes on how Mitch McConnell has run things in the past, which is say things out loud to road test it, and then when the public relations of it is a disaster, then you can say we can't do that.
It would be an enormous piece of legislation. I do think it's within the realm of the possible. I do think if it comes out of the House, which is no small feat given the margins, this is usually when these things run into the Senate parliamentarian, they get trimmed up a little bit. But I do think it's possible because what he's proposing to put in there is exactly what he ran on: immigration, energy, which, by the way, is now of heightened importance because of Joe Biden's executive order today on his way out the door, or his staff's executive order banning offshore drilling. You got to deal with all these things that he ran on. If you can get it done in one vote, that's far better than dragging this out. So it's an ambitious idea. I wish them well. I hope they get it done. But it's what the people voted for in the election, and it's what every Republican member of Congress ran on, too. So people, truthfully, shouldn't have too much trouble voting for it.
When people talk about we should read the bill, good luck with this one. That's all I'm saying if this thing comes through. Gentlemen, thank you. You want to talk about Justin Trudeau?
I wanted to talk about Canada.
You want to talk about Canada?
God bless the truckers. That's what I'm saying. Well, there's a direct line from those truckers to what's happening today. Good riddance.
I'm sleeping. It's only Monday. It's my first day back. This is hard on me.